evening. It is a true delight to be able to welcome you here this morning. You know, I missed you all last month when the weather just wouldn't cooperate. And when I heard the forecast and Sue said, there's going to be snow Thursday morning. Like, oh no! But, you know, I mean, and this is, you know, I really appreciate your willingness to, you know, relocate so that we could get together here at Town Hall until, you know, things get sort of settled in terms of the parking as a result of the snow and ice at Trustway. We've had to relocate all of our programs and activities that we do there. But so I'm not quite sure where we'll be next month. But I mean, either here, we're there. And I'll be calling you anyways. But this isn't bad. I mean, we could do this again one more month if we needed to. Stu Eggenberg is going to be our speaker next month as the chair of the selectmen to just give us sort of an update on where things are with the town as we get ready for town meeting and town elections. It's kind of nice to have the selectmen come in and give a state of the town. And we're very, very grateful to be able to welcome our Chief of Police, Don Cudmore, this morning as our speaker. But before we let him start talking, we have a birthday boy. I mean, still, even though the birthday's passed, but we would have really celebrated in royal style at our breakfast in February. So, Mr. Ken Noonan turned 100 on February 21st, and his family planned this wonderful event at Noonan's Greenhouses, and we had legislators came, the Board of Selectmen came. He was honored with citations from the House and from the Senate and from the governor. The governor gave him 2 citations. That's how special he is. And the Board of Selectmen gave him a proclamation. And Ed coordinated getting the Boston Post cane available. So that was presented, and you know, as the town's oldest resident. So it was great. It was really neat. It was very nice to be involved. And it was nice of the family to include all of us, because that was very special. And it was in the greenhouses, so it was warm, it was tropical, there were, you know, plants everywhere. It was just a great day. So we're so grateful to have you with us. And 100 years, it's amazing what you've seen.
How old are you now?
And
88.
Not yet 100 yet. We're counting. I'm getting ready. I know who's next.
90-something.
Look, she's looking at At any rate, so happy birthday.
I was impressed with what he had done in New York with CBS,
oh, yeah.
and national sort of.
Oh yeah, and we still have to have, you know, we have to have still an opportunity for you to tell the group some of those stories. You know, the Barbara Streisand story, Edward Murrow, the Eisenhower. I mean, in his work as a sound engineer at CBS, I mean, he met all these people early on when, you know, and was on the ground floor for conventions and for, you know, live broadcasts.
And beauty pageants.
And beauty pageants, yes. I'm sure that was hard.
Where were you born?
All right. Well, so we wish you many more still.
Yes.
Damn right.
So maybe this is a good time. The Chief's got, you know, some things just to, you know, to share with us. It's been one heck of a winter. It's been slightly busy across the street.
A bit.
Yeah.
I think that I've come before you before. Good morning. Most of you know who I am, but for those of you who don't, my name is Don Cudmore. I'm the police chief here in Georgetown. Just a little history. I've been on the department. This is my 30th year here. I've lived in Georgetown most of my life, moving here from Salem when I was, I think, 4. So I've been blessed to live here in town. I was grateful that my parents brought us here. I love Georgetown. My family loves Georgetown. Raising my own family here. They're getting older. But I think we have a wonderful community here. And the community's been very good to our police department. They've been very good to me. And I consider it a very fortunate venture for me to be the police chief in my 2nd year. But you know, working my way from a part-time officer many years ago as a civilian dispatcher to where I am today, so I'm able to at least reflect on history, and that will segue into probably what we're dealing with today in policing, not necessarily in Georgetown. I think the 3 biggest themes that we're dealing with right now, and as they say in you folks could attest to, and you can certainly teach me too, that history does repeat itself. So a lot of the things that we're dealing with today, societal changes, we've dealt with in the past. And I know that, you know, you weather the storm and somehow, some way, it comes out and good prevails. But our biggest problems today are drugs and alcohol abuse, specifically drugs, both legal and illegal drugs. Dealing with mental health issues that parlay with drug use, and in the police profession, we 10 to 15% of all of our calls for service deal with somebody who have some type of diminished capacity or mental health issue. So we need to be diligent in training and know how to deal with that. And then obviously the biggest issue that we're dealing with today on the police side is the diversity of our police departments, the diversity of our society, and the militarization of police. So those are three big topics that seem to always come to the top for us. They're not necessarily local topics here in our great community, but they're topics nonetheless that we, as your police department, me as your police chief, in dealing with policy, setting policy and rules, we have to deal with. And we have to be firm, and we have to be very, very careful, because we all know today society is a very complicated place. But like I say, you know, if you look at a historical perspective, as simple as society was years ago, we could probably discuss and share stories about how complicated things were in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And here we are, the year 2015, and we're dealing with a number of issues. And I think that in keeping a sane mind and trying to remain calm and work within the confines of what we deal with here in our society, being diverse and complicated, that we'll do it again. So in starting with the first issue and foremost is the abuse of drugs. I think that everybody knows today, when you're looking at the newspaper and you look at the newspaper articles, that we have a very serious opiate problem in this country, in this state. Both young and old, it crosses no economic lines. We have a vast heroin problem right now. We've had heroin cases in Georgetown. We've had overdoses and deaths in Georgetown relative to those type of drugs. We need to combat that. Society needs to combat it. And at a law enforcement level, I think we're waging a war against it. But there's also a lot of complications to it as well. Funding, the relaxation of legalization of marijuana. In my personal opinion, it's a gateway drug. So, but I would certainly take that tack because I'm a police chief and a long-time police officer. So we have rules and regulations we follow. We're enforcement officers. So whatever the legislature and the public wants the police to do, we try to do that. But it's complicated. And I think just putting those two things on the table, the legalization of one drug, yet the opiate abuse and prescription abuse of other drugs, is a problem. And it's a problem for us as law enforcement officers, as parents. Every family somehow can tell a story of the effects of someone who may or may be involved in those situations that have either ruined lives or taken someone's life. During a fairly significant arrest that we had earlier this year, I made the statement, and my detectives have said it, that the use of heroin is stealing people's souls. And it's a drug that once people use it, it never goes away.
Is it more readily accessible now than, I'm sure, than in the past?
Readily available. It's economically attractive to people because it's so cheap. It originates in Colombia, breaks our borders, and somehow through cartels and transportation ends up in the hands of people. The biggest problem we see right now today is that the drug that's actually manufactured, and I don't purport to be an expert in drugs, but nonetheless, the drug that people seek and want to use is cut up in so many ways, and things are added to it that the drug is actually poison. Drugs are poison anyways, but the poison becomes lethal because of the amount of derivatives and things like that are in those drugs, and it's killing people. And to wage a war on drug and drug abuse costs money, and you need legislation to back the initiatives of law enforcement, the constitutional protections of people to do what they want, when they want, how they want. Also keeps in check, obviously, our ability to enforce the law effectively and according to the law. So, big challenge, real big challenge.
Does Georgetown have that cure for that? If someone takes that heroin, has that thing, they have the cure for it, or whatever it is?
Well, it's not necessarily a cure. What there is a drug out there. It's called Narcan, and that Narcan administration at the first responder level can reduce the side effects of an opiate overdose. It's not a cure-all, and it certainly doesn't cure people, nor does it take away all the effects of it, but it will stop the immediate effects of an opiate overdose. And our fire department carries it in the ambulances. I just instituted a policy in February. We've purchased the drug. The policy is very succinct, though, with regard to training. I have to train everybody, and so to do it effectively and efficiently as funding would allow, I'm trying to piggyback that training on other training, because to train the entire police department on one initiative is expensive. You know, there's 34 people over there that need to be trained, exposed to this particular situation, and to call everybody in and do one training for one event. We try to bring everybody together and do a couple of events because things change, and we try to utilize our training and funding as effectively as possible and efficiently as possible. So we are almost there. We're not carrying it yet, but we purchase it. There's a policy in place, and now we're just awaiting the training initiative to do it, and we will have that availability. I know the fire department has used it. It's been effective as first responders because of our ambulance service, and the officers on GPD will use it when necessary as well. Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Let's hope I can answer it.
Oh, I hope so. People that are trying to sell the drug to say it's a medical issue, I'm just wondering what your response might be, because as you said, it opens the door to all sorts of other stuff. If you're selling it medically, can't you slip it off on the side to someone that doesn't have a medical condition, and you're able to push drugs?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, I mean, if you look at other parts of the country, I'd use Colorado as an example. They started very similar to the Commonwealth, where they legalized the medical use of marijuana, which is a violation of federal statute. Even when states allow the use of marijuana, medical marijuana, it's still a violation of the federal law.
Yeah.
That is too complicated to even discuss, especially even at my level, how the federal law can contradict the state law, and how you enforce that is very complicated. But nonetheless, to answer your question, I think that if you're looking at marijuana and you're looking at prescription drugs, I mean, prescription drug usage is at an all-time high. You know, we attend meetings at the district attorney's office because we seek counsel and support from them to help us with enforcement. And there's a large percentage of the population that's on a regular dose of a prescribed medication for whether it be emotional issues and the like. Those drugs are used, and as Ed said, could be given to someone else. I mean, it's very difficult to enforce that. Medical marijuana, the same thing. I was getting back to Colorado. They started with medical marijuana. It's now legal to possess in that state. I've spoken to law enforcement officers across the country about it in my travels. There's some very complicated issues going on there too. It didn't solve all their problems. I think whether you're pro or con legalization of marijuana, everything comes with a cost, and everything comes with additional problems. There's no simple solution to that. And enforcement at the local level, and the street officers, so to speak, it's tough, you know, and we have to, you know, time is the test, and as we see legislation develop, it's all very new to us as well. I mean, this has been a long initiative, and it's still, although it's here, it still has not been totally implemented. So from a law enforcement standard, you have this year to 3 year flux of how to handle it. You got to more training. You got to train people how to handle marijuana. But everything changes. I mean, I can tell stories back when I started in '85, how we handled calls for service then in our community, and how we do it today. It's very different. Didn't make it right, didn't make it wrong. It's just different. And so time will be our test with that. And we you know, we seek out the best candidates to become police officers. I know retired Officer Clay did the job back in his day, and he's probably looking at me saying, the job's changed a little bit since we did it in the 80s, you know, when he walked away. So, but that's what we sign up for, you know, and we need educated, good police officers out there that have a very, very round knowledge of everything. We often say to the academy graduates that, you know, you can be a law enforcement officer and a police officer. We know what a law enforcement officer does, he enforces the law, but today, 90% of your work as a police officer is the counsel, advice, mediation, all of those things, versus the police officer part is very simple in policing. When you're called upon to act because someone has done something and you seek out the bad guy, so to speak, that's the easy part of the job. The difficult part of the job is dealing with societal changes, helping people, dealing with problems, the mediation aspect of whether it be a neighborhood dispute or something as large as medical marijuana, and you're dealing with people on the street and they're purporting to have the ability to possess this drug. We know it's a drug. We've been trained our whole careers to deal with marijuana as a classified illegal drug. Now we have to look at it differently. That takes a long time to change. So those are the complications. And on the heels of that, when I said the militarization of the police, society's, as I said, is very complicated, and the politics of our world today are extremely complicated and tough to understand. We're supposed to be educated, and I don't even understand it all sometimes. We as the police need to be prepared to deal with those problems. We need officers to know the difference between political affiliations and religious affiliations. It takes a lot, you know, and we're not perfect. And of course the police aren't without sin, we all know that. But the police today, I think, do a great job. I'm biased, of course, but I think, and especially in my own community, they do the best they can, highest of integrity and honesty. And do we make mistakes? Every single day. Otherwise you wouldn't need me to be watching the place, right? So yes, we do make mistakes sometimes. But, you know, a mistake, human beings make mistakes, and police officers are human beings. So yes, they will make mistakes. So long as it's not intentional, and so long as it's not something that was done with malice. Sir?
How do you keep up with the constantly changing electronics? I have several friends that are state police, and they're constantly being retrained and stuff on all this brand new electronic things coming out. Now, plus you're going to have individual cameras and things like that. How do you keep up with that? Do you have someone that deals strictly with the newest electronics, or?
To be very honest with you, no, we don't have somebody specific to deal with it. Just like in every profession, some people are good at things and some people are better at things. So we do have some officers who are very technologically savvy, and they help the other officers who are not very technologically savvy, and somehow we get a good blend to deal with those technological changes. The advent of technology has absolutely exploded, and is very difficult for law enforcement. We have to keep up with that technology, and that's costly. The service systems we have to have, the computer systems. Interesting, you mentioned body cameras for police officers. I mean, there's almost 1 million law enforcement officers in the United States of America. It's approaching 1 million. Now you can imagine what the cost is to put a camera on every law enforcement officer. There was an initiative out there of $75 million from the federal government to put cameras on police officers. Well, they'll put cameras on about 50,000 police officers. That leaves 950,000 without cameras. So how effective is that, right? I don't know. I'll listen to that debate. But the technology part of that is, the camera and the hardware is one thing. The software to download that data every single day, the servers that are needed to keep that data, the legalities of how long you keep that data, or what's public and what's private. You know, when the police go into your home and you're having a problem, and you've never had any problems before, you have a problem, do you want that aired to everyone because you have a problem, whether it results in a criminal charge or just mediation or some assistance from your police department? You're being filmed. You know, these are the type of things as citizens. I'm a police officer, but I'm still a citizen too. Should that problem be vetted to the whole world like things are today on Facebook and YouTube and all that? I mean, we see the police videos, we know. But we catch a 20-second blimp of a 5-minute video, you know, are we getting the true perspective of what happened? So how do you hold all that data? Who's in charge of that data? Who can look at it? You know, so you're right, there's a ton of questions. And then
every once in a while you'll hear about the 911 gets screwed up or something like that, or else that changes. You add 2 more communities or something like this or something. I mean,
sure.
Are you constantly updated on that by, I don't know, state or?
I attended a legislative meeting yesterday concerning the changes. And it's no secret that there is a regional dispatch center in Middleton where calls would be filtered from our community to a regional center. I've been involved in that process since 2009 when they originally started talking about regional lockups, regional communications. I'm opposed to regional communications, maybe for selfish reasons because of where I live, because I live in such a nice community, and I know that if our community needs something and they call our communication center, they're getting good data, good information, officers who are knowledgeable and know our community. Someone calls 911 and it goes to a regional center, they're just, that's one of 12 people who don't live in that community, who don't know the community. You know, with that local flavor and knowing. I mean, I know 90% of the people in this room and where you live. The officers know. So that's invaluable information when there's a problem. If it goes to a stranger to come back to the police department, it's lost in translation. And regional communications, to me, was sold to save money. There's no savings of any money there. At per capita, if you have 8,500 residents, that's $16.25 a resident. That's the cost to go to the regional center. Just do the math. We don't save any money. I'm sure there's ancillary costs that we may or may not save, but you don't get the service that you'll ever get, that you get today. Call on a Sunday morning, call the police station, or just go to the police station. If we get rid of the communication center, these police stations are closed and locked at night. When you pick up the blue phone outside the door, the officers are out, the door's locked. I could not fathom living in Georgetown and someone coming to the police station at 2:30 in the morning not being able to get in. It's just, I don't understand. I could never understand that. Now maybe the future police chief will, or the future of policing is that, but it's tough to get your hands around it today.
Yeah, I have friends that live in Topsfield, and recently they had some friends over there playing cards, and the woman, the wife of the couple, she slumped over in a chair like she had a stroke or something. And they called 911, and the ambulance came, and then first the cruiser came, then the ambulance came. And I picked this woman up every Monday night, so I know where she lives. And the snowbanks are so tight, you can easily go by the house and not even see the driveway, and I've done it, and I know where she lives. And I said to her, did someone go outside in the street with a flashlight and tell the ambulance where you were? And she said, oh no, the number's on the house. I said, well, how can you see it in the dark with the snowbanks so high? They must have known who they were, like you said, you know 90% of the people and where they lived. Mm-hmm. That's true, huh?
It's just, for me personally, now, I answer to the Board of Selectmen, I answer to the community. If the proposal came up to deal with a regional dispatch center, Mr. Fowler serves on the board, he's aware of the intricacies of how our town works and the budget constraints and the budget requirements to run a town like Georgetown. We would have to talk about it. But I've been publicly, privately opposed to it. I just don't think it fits our community. There are communities where it fits and it works. And it's worked for a long time for them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it would work here. And those are just in other parts of the country there was nothing but regional dispatch. But you could do regional policing too, right? I mean, you can regionalize your school districts. I mean, everyone knows that regionalization has a place and a purpose. But getting back to your questions about the regionalization of dispatch in our communication center, I like what we have. I think it works. I think it's economical. We have 4 full-time dispatchers. That's what, and the rest of the shifts are filled with part-time dispatchers who are also part-time police officers. So we use our bodies very effectively. They are trained in both areas. It's great to have an officer who answers the phone and then tomorrow night works out on the street. We have that.
John, how many police officers do we have now?
The police department's comprised of 11 full-time officers. And that allows the police department to have 2 officers on duty around the clock. That's the minimum it takes to do that with an administrative position during the day, such as myself. And we have between 15 and 18 part-timers, part-time police officers. That number changes. I know the exact number, of course, it's 15 right now. But it can fluctuate because we have movement in that force all the time. They're sworn, they're trained just as full-time police officers, but they're a better fit in our organizational structure because of our budget. They don't make as much money as a full-time officer. They're no less of an officer. I started as a reserve officer. But they save us with regard to benefits and fringe costs of having full-time employees. The police department, we have 4 full-time dispatchers and then that complement of 15 fill in on part-time. So we fill a lot of shifts with our part-time folks. But your part-time police officers are full-time firefighters in other communities. They're full-time public safety personnel in other positions, ambulance companies and so forth. So they have useful skills that they bring to the table. We have reserve officers who are also paramedics. They're not paid to be a paramedic, but they are a paramedic when they come to our homes. That's a great benefit that we have. We have 4 of those out of the 15. In big communities too, Cambridge, Beverly, Middleton, these are Ipswich. One of our reserve officers, longtime reserve officer, is a lieutenant on the Ipswich Fire Department. Invaluable. And he's working for us at a reduced rate, so to speak, but what a great asset that we have. All my other reserve officers who work other places have the skills of paramedics and other skill sets. So, I mean, that's an advantage to our community. It's challenging because of all that scheduling and hiring. And I come before the Board of Selectmen often and ask for the appointment of a reserve officer, and it makes it sound like I have 100 cops, you know. But it's not the case. I mean, there's movement. Reserve officers, it's a training ground for some people. They move on and do. They get a full-time police job somewhere else. Lately, we've had a couple of retirements, so we're pulling from that reserve force. Great thing about doing that, they're already trained. They've been vetted out. There's been an acceptable marriage between the employee and the agency. They now become full-time. It's a great system. We just hired Officer Ballard. She's starting the academy in May. She's been with us for 10 years part-time. So I don't have to tell her or show her the streets, right? I don't have to show her all that. So she comes out of that academy, hits the ground, she's already trained.
It's a known fact, in-house is the best one.
I agree. I agree with that. And I think it's proven very effective here in Georgetown. We don't have lateral transfers here. People come here to work and they retire here because of the community, the department, and they take care of us, and hopefully we take care of them. And there is much lateral movement in other departments, job shifting and changes. Like I say, we have 2. Lieutenant Thompson has announced his retirement. He's leaving in the 27th of March. And then Sergeant DeJoy has said he's going to retire in the end of June. So those are 2 34-year employees. 68 years of service on the police department here in town, so they know a little bit about the place too, which is kind of nice. But their two replacements are internal candidates, time tested, and we don't have to worry about who they are and if they like it here. So it's a great system. But on the heels of that, we haven't added to the police department since 1999 on a full-time basis. 38% increase in population. We're busy. We're busy. It's our job to keep the community safe. We do a good job at it, but you know, down the road, we have to look at, is it as effective to have as many part-time employees and not at least 1 or 2 more full-time employees? The training, the weaponry, is it cost prohibitive to have 7 people fill in for 1 person? You know, so you know, down the road we need to look at that. You know, funding is always an issue there, and We've done a good job with what we have, and we've been able to maintain that throughout our time, even through bad economic times. We survived. We lost our school resource officer in '09, which was a grant officer, but we're able to keep our full-time officer complement at 11.
How many cruisers do we have now?
We have 5 marked cruisers and 3 unmarked. And then an
That's what,
administrative
just 2
vehicle.
a day or out?
Well, what we do is and for folks who are watching or people that have been on the FinCom, back in probably 2000, when I took over as a lieutenant, I took over the fleet, we always had problems with cruisers. They wouldn't last the budgetary cycle. And so we initiated a lease program. Didn't cost the community anymore, but we were leasing 2 cars every 2 years. So instead of buying 1 new car every year, pounding it into the ground, so to speak, and then getting another car, getting the 2 and sidelining 1 and rotating them through the fleet. Today the fleet, when I go before the FinCom on Saturday, we have the budget, we have absolutely no vehicle problems whatsoever. And in years past, I'd have to come before with the chief and ask for, we need money for cars, they have 100,000 miles on them, they're not running, they're this and they're that. And today, there's no fleet problems. With that institution of that new program, we got 2 new cars this year. We got 2 new cars 2 years ago, so if you just do the math and you sideline those cars, they're assigned to officers. Only certain officers drive certain cars, so we can monitor driving habits, fuel economy. Some people are harder on vehicles than others. We have family members we know. We know in our family who drives the cars hard, right? Well, I know who drives the cars hard at the PD. So we're able to monitor that and ensure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck out of that vehicle. But it's exciting to not have vehicle problems.
So at any given time, they're all registered and all, and
They're all
anybody can
functional.
take
Right,
them?
currently, right now, we don't have a marked unit that has over 100,000 miles on it. In 2009, almost all of them did. So now, today, I mean, I just took delivery of 2 new vehicles, the same exact money. It was a little more expensive to outfit them, but I redirected some funding on repairs of the older units onto the newer vehicles, so it washed in the budget to have 2 brand new vehicles put into the fleet, and the oldest vehicle only has 40,000 miles on it. So you don't hear, I mean, back in 2009, we had to borrow 2 cars from the sheriff's department. We had a crash, and we had vehicles that didn't run.
I would like to say that his fleet policy should be a model for the rest of the town. Not only does he like that, but he's got the records of maintaining them and everything so that they are in good shape.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Fowler. Thank you. And I think that, you know, I take pride in the vehicles because I'm a bit of a motorhead myself. And I have very good officers who, we make repairs on the vehicles, obviously not repairs that would deal with the safety issues of the vehicles, but I don't have to send everything out to be fixed. I have a couple of sergeants that will make necessary repairs to vehicles that would normally cost a couple of $100 here and there. These officers do it while they're on duty. We buy the parts, and it's effective, you know, and they maintain the vehicles. I mean, if you go up there in that parking lot right now, it's the dirtiest that the community's ever been because of our onslaught of the winter. They wash them, they vacuum them themselves. I don't even have to tell them to do it. They take care. They're a tool to them, but they're their car, it's assigned to them. So there's a pride and ownership to something that's assigned to you that you use every day. Unlike years past where 9 different people would drive 1 car and it would just be used to its excess. And Roger Clay's laughing, so he knows what I'm talking about. But today there's a pride and ownership when it's yours. You know, I'm assigned a vehicle that's a 2009. I drive the oldest vehicle. When I go to a Chiefs meeting, my vehicle's the oldest in the parking lot, but it's only got 32,000 miles on it. That car's going to last us a lifetime. There's nothing wrong with that car. And because I'm a taxpayer, I have no intention of replacing that car. It's just going to cost me more money. I'll drive that car until it no longer will drive. So that's our mentality. And another very important program, just to sideline on vehicles, because it is important. It costs a lot of money to run cars today in gas. We stopped driving and utilizing a vehicle beyond its useful life. We actually trade them in now. I auction the vehicle off once the selectmen sign off that it's a surplus vehicle. That vehicle's put online with a private company and they surplus that car, and that money goes back into the general fund. That was never happening. They take the vehicle, pass it on to another department to a point where it was beyond its useful life. My friends at the fire department would cut them up for practice. I would rather try to sell them and get some money back. So I take the vehicle and I surplus that vehicle through the board. I could not get rid of anything that the town owns unless the board approves it. And there's a nice process in place for surplus property. If it's something useful, we'll try to give it to somebody. But if it's something that we can sell and get some money back, put it back into the general fund, we do that. Would I like the money to come back to the police department? Sure, but it goes into the general fund. And so then it's reallocated and reappropriated at town meeting like it should be.
Some police departments have these Humvees that are on steroids and they're from the military.
I don't have any Humvees. We don't need Humvees.
Do you think that probably there is a place for them?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Some communities do need them.
I don't say no that they should.
Well, Plum Island, for example,
Sure.
you know the storms that they entail down there on the
Yeah,
beach?
yeah.
It's beautiful in the summer, but when Mother Nature's upset,
Right.
you know, you need something to get down there. We went from a very aggressive police vehicle in the 80s and 90s when I was a young officer with the largest engines and the biggest capacities. And what we realized in policing, educated officers realizing that pursuits are non-existent today. They're very defined policy on when you pursue a vehicle. And the fact that we're driving around our community, you know, 13.9 square miles of our community, a 6-cylinder vehicle is fine. It's very economical, as long as we buy something that's durable, something that we think will last, is great. Better on gas, easier to repair. More fundamental to the fleet now is I try to buy vehicles where all the parts are the same, so that I don't have to have 7 different tires for 7 different cars. It's nice to have 2 types of tires for 8 cars.
Can you choose what cars you want, or do you have to put it out for bid?
It's difficult and it's complicated because if there's a state bid to buy a vehicle, I have to use the state bid list. And as you can see, if you look at police fleets, they go from Dodge, Chevy, and Ford, right? But what happens is one year Dodge has a state bid, the next year Ford has a state bid.
Yeah.
So you have to work within that confine. Ford came out with a very good product, an all-wheel drive SUV style vehicle that you see that we have today. Very effective for the winter. In years past, we'd have to put chains on a rear-wheel drive vehicle. The chains would fall off, damage the vehicle. You have to pay a gas station attendant to put the chains on. All that's gone. And the SUV style vehicle is the same as the sedan vehicle, it just has a different body on it. It's pursuit ready. It has all of the dynamics of that vehicle. The only thing that's different is the body that sits on the chassis. So we're moving towards that. We leased 2 of those this time around, and it's worked out very well. And it was the best winter to test them, and it's been great. We don't get stuck. Yeah.
One question. I don't know how Georgetown is, but I know you're out and there's a cruiser stop with the lights flashing. Their lights are so bright that they blind you,
They do.
and that's wrong.
Well, what we did in Georgetown, if you look at the blue light pattern in the back of our cars,
I haven't seen it.
you haven't been stopped, right?
No,
That was a joke. I'm a serious person, but I try to tell a joke once
I
in a
know
while.
you know me. You don't have to stop me to say hello.
On the back of our light pattern on our new cars, and we only have one left that does not have this, and I'm not going to invest the money in it until we get rid of it next year, is the blue light pattern is broken up with red and yellow.
Yeah.
And what that does is it allows for the person coming up upon a vehicle
Yeah.
not to be blinded by that blue light sequence. So it breaks that up, and then secondly,
Especially your state police, they're so bright,
right, they are.
they blind you, you can't see what's beside them.
And so we've been able to break that pattern up, but then more importantly, the new vehicles today have a tone down with that brightness.
Yeah.
So once the motor vehicle stop is affected and the person is on the side of the road, they can reduce the brightness of that light so it's not so blinding, because it is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I've experienced it myself. So hopefully here in our community we've tried to eliminate and reduce it. So.
Every time I see a blue light behind me, I hope they're going by.
You know what? Me too. How are we doing for time?
I think we're
You done?
there. What do you think? Anybody have any other?
Is
Oh,
that
yeah.
true that the police and the fire department are the only ones allowed to use the blue lights?
That's correct. And the only person that can put a blue light in an unmarked vehicle is the police chief gives a permit for that, as does the fire chief for red lights. And then obviously, if you're within a police agency, my vehicle is unmarked, doesn't look like a police vehicle, but it has blue lights in it in case I need to do something while I'm running about the community. Sir?
I have a question that has nothing to do with the Georgetown area, but last couple of days in the newspaper and on TV, semi-trailer truck carrying millions of dollars of gold.
I read that this morning too.
Which one?
It conveniently broke down.
He happened to break down on the highway. Someone pulls up behind him, and of course it's the thief, and he's going to clean out the truck. They have no idea who these guys are. They've disappeared into the sunset. They were in a white, smaller
It
SUV.
reminds me of the case, if you remember, when the armored car was heisted and ended up in the woods, and lo and behold, millions of dollars have disappeared. So when I read that, it brought me back to that case where, you know, conveniently, whether someone's driving that or has, you know, access to that.
There may be some connections with.
It almost sounds like it's inside.
Yeah,
It sounds like an inside job. You're right, Rush.
But we'll leave that to the. It didn't happen in my community, so I'm glad. So we'll let them handle that. I have all the faith in the world in the police down there. I think they'll handle it. I think they'll handle it.
Okay.
Well,
Very nice.
thank you so much, Don.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank
It's getting warm, I guess. It's not
It
gonna
is.
snow anymore, so,
Yeah.
and thank you all for the support, and if you have a problem, give us a call. A lot of good, smart men and women at the PD that can help you in any facet of your life, so give us a shout if you need us, and you certainly know where to find us, and our doors are not locked.
No, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Good, so thank you. So listen, next month, we'll have men's breakfast, and I'll call and make sure that you know where we're gonna be, but Stu will be with us to talk about, you know, the state of the town before we get into town meeting, and we will. We'll have a breakfast and maybe here, but that's okay. We'll be looking forward to next January.